Hey everybody, this is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast from a different place up here in the North Country on a hunting trip. You can see behind me, they got several inches of snow with about another 21 coming or so. It's going to be really deep and lots of fun out here. And I'll tell you, as soon as he saw the picture, this guy, my assistant beat writer, Zeke Trezevan, said, "Oh, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it." So, Zeke, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you. I'm used to being a little bit more warm than I am tonight.
Yes, sir. Good to be back, man. I know you're going to have fun up north.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good hunting trip. You know, you married a good girl when she asked for Christmas a new hunting rifle and a hunting trip
Hey, you wanted life. You wanted life.
and a full pink camouflage Arctic hunting gear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a good one.
I got a good one there. All right, buddy. A lot to talk about with the Raiders. A lot. First, let's start with Carmen Bricillio, who absolutely performed admirably the last two seasons as the offensive line coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. Got so much out of that group. Such a great coach. We called him Josh McDaniel's secret weapon, and he was. Just continually. I know that someone said today, they said they heard a rumor. Him and AP got along great. In fact, he wouldn't have gotten the Giants job without AP's blessing. But you don't ask guys to sit around and wait to see who's going to be the coach. You've got a family to take care of, and they take the job. Someone said to me, was this AP telling him, I don't want you? No, that was not what it was. It's AP telling him, I don't know if I'm getting the job.
Yeah.
And so if you got a chance to go take one, I understand. And he went and he did that. So good for him. Good for Carmen. I think it's not a good day for the Raiders. He's a terrific offensive line coach. I know that you liked him.
Mm-hmm.
I not only liked him as a coach, was a friend. Away from football, I care about him and his family. Tremendous loss for the Raiders. Now, there's a lot of great coaches that want to come coach with AP, so he's not going to have a problem getting a good offensive line coach. But this is the guy that stability. He's been there 2 years. Your offensive line already likes him. He's proven the ability to develop talent. It's a loss for the Raiders. It's not one that is insurmountable, but a big loss. Your thoughts?
100%. He's definitely one of the better coaches. I think you look at the last two seasons. Obviously, last year, Jacobs led the league in rushing. You can't do that without a great offensive line, and the offensive line doesn't perform that well if they're not being coached up. But I think he may have done even more of an admirable job this past season, the one that just ended, because everything wasn't perfect. There was some hiccups that you had to get through. You had a rookie quarterback for half the season, a new coach come in halfway through, and to be able to still, and if you remember, when Josh Jacobs went down with that injury, he was, I want to say, top 5 in terms of running backs and yardage. Again, going back to the offensive line. So, Bricillio did a great job. And to your point, right, the job for AP is up in the air. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. So if the coordinator has a job, opportunity elsewhere, he owes it to himself and to his family to pursue that. It's a business for the players. It's a business for the coaches as well.
Well, and the thing that gets me is I put this out on Twitter the other day. It's silly season, and don't send me all your questions. Just read what we report. I don't want Hondo. What about this? Hondo, I saw. Just stop. We report, and you go off and make your own opinion because I'm looking on social media. I had people send me the emails. I just didn't read them. I just delete them. He left because AP was not pleased with his performance. He wouldn't have got the Giants job without
It's the
AP.
Giants. Yeah, it's the Giants. I can see maybe another team, then you can kind of make that, that statement. But we're talking about the team that AP won a Super Bowl with. Like, you don't think they called up AP,
And the team that I reported the other day, if the Raiders move on from him, he's going to be one of their top candidates for defensive coordinator. And I said it before Wink Martindale. Yes.
Listen, You use it. I kind of smiled when you said it, but it is silly season. And a couple things. Silly season started right after that last game, which it does for every team. But I think silly season is a lot bigger of a season for the Raiders than most other teams. I've seen some crazy thoughts and things thrown out there as well. So it's been interesting to see.
I don't report on other people's reporting. I'm too busy reporting. And if you want to report on other people's reporting, that means you have nothing to report, right? I mean, let's just
It's
stick with
true.
what we're doing. But a big loss, but not one that's insurmountable because there are a lot of good coaches that want to come coach for AP.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the nitty gritty. I don't expect anything before Tuesday coming up in a few days. Today's Friday. Don't expect anything before Tuesday. And I don't think anything will come Tuesday. I'm just saying before Tuesday. And I expect it to be done, the 31st of January. Someone asked me, do you think it's a big deal that they haven't requested anyone to interview as head coaches? No. They're going to go hire the GM. But in this situation, if it's Champ Kelly, we know he wants AP. And if it's Jim Harbaugh, they're going to hire the GM that Jim wants, and then he's going to hire Jim. So I'm not at all even remotely thinking that's a bad thing. They're going to get whoever they want, and Jim's going to pick his, and if it's Champ, it's going to be AP. I mean, now someone asked me, "Do you think that Bill Belichick is an option?" What do you think, Zeke? Bill Belichick coming back with Josh McDaniels?
Hey, it's funny. It's funny. You like. Listen, I definitely think it's between AP and Harbaugh, hands down. But at the same time, I mean, come on. The saying has been Bill can't win without Tom, and where's Tom at? So at the end of the day, I know that their relationship was maybe not the best at the end. But at the same time, it's the NFL. You can really never say never in a situation like this. Do I think it's
You can
likely?
never say
No.
never, but we can say minimum.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I think
Or
the
in the
chance
words of Jim Carrey, so you're saying there's a chance.
there's a chance, but a very, very small one. So I definitely think it's between AP and Harbaugh, and then way, way, way down that list is Bill. And I'm only saying that because of Tom's, his connection to the Raiders. So I definitely think it's a two-man race right now.
Yeah, I think it's 40% AP, 39.5 to 40% Harbaugh, 15% Mike Vrabel, 5% others.
Yeah,
Harbaugh.
I think that's
I
I
mean,
think that's fair.
Gruden. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's fair.
But it's yeah. Anyways, all right, moving along. Let's talk about an issue that I think is very important, and it's when you look at the Raiders organization, the players are literally begging and craving stability. The longer this goes out, do you think that benefits Champ and AP, or does it benefit Harbaugh or anyone else the longer it extends?
The longer it extends, I think, and this is actually a darn good question. I think the longer it extends, off the top of my head, I think it benefits Harbaugh because I feel like that says that they're trying to work a deal out. If it and then because you got to look at AP's already been there, right? I do think that they're going to do their due diligence. I think even if the answer is AP, they're still going to talk to other people. I think that's part of it. So that's why I think, hey, the longer this goes, it benefits Harbaugh. You already know what you have for the most part in AP. Why would you want to draw it out a week or two or three or whatever it may be, right? So I think it benefits Harbaugh if I had to guess.
All right, so I'm going to drop this out to you because I disagree with you. I think it benefits AP, and here's why. Because if Harbaugh's your guy, you want to get to him as quick as you can so he can get all his scouts and
Mm-hmm.
people in there for the draft and the combine coming up quick in February.
Mm-hmm.
Because you already know, all right, I've got Champ in the building. I got our scouts already working. If we extend it out a little bit, we're okay. Now, what do you think that you heard my opinion? I mean, it's just interesting to get different
Yeah,
perspectives, isn't it?
yeah. No. This is good. So I would still like, and everything you said makes sense. I would. So I look at it like this: AP, right? The fact that he's already in there, it's like, hey, he's already got all those things, right? So if he already has those things and it's still being drawn out, what's the wait for? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, why are you
Bingo.
waiting?
Bingo. That's a great point, Zeke.
You know,
Great point. I'm telling
that's
you. Yeah.
yeah, that's, and again, I'm like I said, this is a darn good question. I think it's not, it can go either way, basically, in terms of your question. So, but I think the longer it goes, I think it benefits Harbaugh, because I'm not sure how many other teams Harbaugh would really want to go to outside of the Raiders. I don't know. That's what I'm saying, but I feel like Raiders focus is where Harbaugh is right now. So I think the
Well, I
longer it
think I
goes,
think the Bears. I
yeah.
think the Bears.
Did
I
did
don't
the
think the Chargers would pay him. I think they would give him the power that he wants.
mhm.
I don't think they would give him the money because they've never done it, but they might. Carolina, that's the richest owner in the NFL, so there's always a potential there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree. I think it's fascinating. All right, I want to go a little bit of a different direction. You're in that locker room with me. You and I talk to players on the record. We talk to them off the record, and they are adamant that they want AP. And I had someone ask the other day, if you say you don't care what fans think, why do you bring up fan opinion? And I thought that was a great comment. And it wasn't a person being a jerk. I thought it was a great comment because I think it's important to listen to your critics.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's important to listen to people that ask legitimate questions. Now, if somebody's a jerk about it, I just mute them. Don't want to deal with you. Just get out of my life. But if somebody asks it in a sincere tone, and I think because you want to listen to people, and because I think it's important to listen to people and to ascertain what they're thinking. That's how I know if okay, we didn't explain this good enough. If one person asks, maybe we did. If two did, we better go back and re-explain it. Um, you and I have had players tell us ask about AP. I mean, asking us to do it. So clearly, we're not trying to force the issue when they're saying, hey, make sure you ask about AP. I don't think the average fan, I think they understand that the players want him. I don't think the average fan understands how much they want him. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I don't think most people understand that, right, from the outside looking in. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how many people even in the room really fully understand it. And I'll tell you this, it hit me when I think Max talked, I want to say the last week of the season, and he dropped a couple F-bombs, and which is normal for Max, but it was the tone in which he said it. Like, he's like, hey, I'm tired of the change. There is, hey, we want this guy to be our head coach, and then there's, we need this guy to be the head coach. And that was kind of the feeling that I got from Max. And if he feels that way, you already know a lot of the other guys who don't have the voice that he has probably feels the same way. So trust me, like, you can't fake those guys wanting AP, how much they want AP. You got guys that are about to be free agents that said, hey, even if I'm not here next year, I still hope AP gets the job, right? Even if I don't play for the Raiders next year. So what does that tell you about where the players stand, that they're saying, hey, I could play for another team and I still hope AP gets it back here? I think that says a lot in terms of how bad the locker room wants to play for him.
Yeah, I think there's one thing to say, I want this guy. There's another thing to say, we need him. And I think there is a huge contingent of the Raiders organization that's tired of the drama, tired of the only thing that's consistent with the Raiders is change, wanting there to be stability. And I'm going to say it this way, and I want you to correct me if you disagree. I laugh because people say you're not allowed to disagree with me. How funny is that one? They don't
Yeah,
know
it's
us
funny.
very well, do they?
Right.
Um, to me, it is, and I want to be careful. I don't want to do hyperbole, but it is almost a cry for help. Hey, we're doing our job. Just give us stability. It's gone from, woo, we want them with Rich to, come on, man, we need AP. Overstatement or pretty accurate?
it's accurate, and I'll take it a step further. Like we just said, hey, it's a difference between a player saying, hey, I want this coach and I need this coach. I think there's a difference between players saying we want this coach and then them going out on the field and showing you a completely different team underneath that same coach than what they were before. They showed it to you. The proof is in the pudding. They're not just talking. It's not lip service. Those guys, those football players went out there and played their butts off significantly better underneath AP. So I think that's why it's such a cry for help, right? When you talk, the reason why Max is saying that is because Max is saying, hey, I've given you my verbal word of who I want, and we've gone out on the field and performed and showed you. What more can a football player do than those two things, right? Like that's why it's such a cry for help. Max is like, what else do I have to do, right? Those guys balled out underneath AP, right? 5-4, and then again, you think about that Minnesota game, could have easily been a Raiders victory, right? Like think about those 2 games or 2 or 3 games that they left on the field that they could have won. Even the Indy game, I feel like they could have won that game. That doesn't happen underneath the previous coaching, regime or anybody else that they could have put in halfway through the season. So I think that's where the cry for help is coming out, is because they've spoken it verbally and they have physically shown you that they will play better underneath AP. As a player, there's not much more they can do.
Yep, 100% agree with you. No argument from me, Zeke. All right, shift directions a little bit. 13th pick in the draft. I think Aiden O'Connell has not shown us he's the next Ken Stabler, but he's shown us he has the potential to be pretty darn good. The way he protected the football, the way that you saw AP saying, all right, don't take these risks. Our defense will win he did exactly what was asked of him. I don't know if he's the next Ken Stabler, but I also don't know that he's not. Do you go spend pick 13 on a quarterback? Do you go try to move up? Or do you say, hey, there's going to be a lot of great quarterbacks later in this draft. Let's keep plugging in pieces. Let's keep getting guys, because it's not like we have no quarterback. The fans are surprised when I say this, but I think you would vouch for it. It ain't a joke. AP's on team A04. He believes in Aiden O'Connell. What would you do if you were the next GM of the Raiders?
I would definitely stay at 13. Just because I think in this draft, you have maybe 4 quarterbacks, just coming off the top of my head. I think you might have 4 to 5 quarterbacks that are legit, that are maybe even worth moving up. And they're just so far away from that for them to trade into that area, you'd have to trade a lot to get up to that. So personally, I don't think the Raiders are that far off from being a playoff team. So there's no need for you to go trade.
Well, we know now they're 1 game off.
Exactly, right? So, there's no need for you to go trade multiple picks, and it would be a lot of picks to get to where they need to get just because you missed the playoffs, right? And think about all they went through to miss the playoffs by 1 game. I think you're a little bit far, closer than what you may realize. So I think they stand pat. I think they go ahead and start to build around, whether it's Aiden, whoever it may be. I think they're going to build around the quarterback position, and then go from there. So I would hope that they don't trade up, because I don't think they need to.
And I think you and I would both agree, both of us would agree that I would pick a quarterback in this draft. I'd pick one that had a little bit of mobility and let him compete with Aiden. But there's some guys down after round 1. I think there's some guys that are being heralded as can't miss, that people around the NFL don't share those sentiments.
I agree.
And go back and, step back and pick a little bit. I know this, and I know this for a fact. The reason the Raiders did is because they knew that the Denver Broncos and 2 other teams were targeting him. So they knew where they had to get him, where they got him. He was a guy that, if he'd come out the year before, would have been a first-round draft pick. Again, neither one of us is saying he's the Ken Stabler of the future. We're also saying he's done enough that you don't throw him away. You go get another quarterback, let him compete with Aiden, but you also know they're not a whole bunch of players away. So at 13, if you can pick up a stud, you do that. Now, I know you're pretty excited about this. A former Super Bowl winning champion quarterback who played in the NFL 12 years is going to be coming on. He now has a service where he rates every single draft eligible quarterback. Every one.
Okay.
In over 2 or 3 podcasts, he's coming on to give our viewers the same information the GMs get from him. He's going to go over every single quarterback. How cool is that going to be?
Oh, that's amazing. Whenever you have a person or entity that can kind of give you those nuggets like that, you're right. I do like that kind of stuff, that kind of nerdy information. And you got to think, like you said, a lot of people think that a quarterback is going to be great or he's a can't miss, and then they hit the NFL and it's like, how wrong could we have been, right? So if you can kind of get that insight before drafting a potential bust, that's so valuable. Then it's even more valuable to those who don't necessarily have that information readily available all the time. So yeah, that's going to be pretty cool.
All right, let's talk about Patrick Graham. Uh, I remember, and I know you remember this, last offseason, I took a ton of criticism because I talked about he was a great defensive coordinator. A lot of people wanted to get rid of him. Like, no, you don't get rid of him. He's a good one. He's a guy I said when the Raiders got him was a potential head coach. Now you've seen it all after 2 years. The Raiders, of course, can block any lateral move, and he's a defensive coordinator. So he's getting some head coaching interview at Tennessee. But if he doesn't get a head coaching job, and AP's retained, I expect him to be back here. How big of a deal is it for the Raiders to keep Patrick Graham?
I think outside of what they choose to do at the head coaching position, obviously, I think there's one A and that's one B, honestly. And I've felt that way since Josh was still the head coach. You got to look at everything that he had to deal with this year, not just coaching up the defensive side, but playing on the other side of an offense that couldn't move the ball, that couldn't score. That affects your defense. I don't think a lot of people realize that, or they don't put enough stock into that. But when you don't know if your offense is going to be able to score any points at all on game day, and you still put out one of the best defenses in the National Football League, that says a lot about your coach. That says a lot about your defensive coordinator. And what I liked about what he did is it never mattered how good or bad Sunday went. He kept the same demeanor. He coached the same, and he always challenged those guys to get better. I literally don't have the words to tell you how important it is to bring back Patrick Graham, and I felt that way for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. It would listen. The only loss bigger than losing Patrick Graham, in my opinion, is to lose AP because Patrick Graham has a huge impact on one side of the ball. AP impacts the entire part of the ball. All right, want to go to Mark, and I want to talk to you about Mark Davis. I have made it clear this is a legacy defining hire. If he goes and gets AP and AP fails, he gets to go bring in the next guy, and everybody loves him because he listened.
Yep.
If he doesn't bring in AP, it's two of the last 2 years. He ignored his locker room to go get who he wanted, who he got, better win. This, I don't think enough's being talked. It is by us, but I don't think enough's being talked nationally. This is a monster decision for Mark Davis and his legacy. Am I overstating it?
I think again, this whole situation, right? When it comes to the Raiders, when it comes to really any team, you have to look at the total picture, right? This is so much bigger for Mark Davis than just this decision, right? Because like you said, you got to go back and start looking at the history at that point. And then you swing out, you swing and miss so many times. After a while, you have to look in the mirror and acknowledge that it's you that's the problem. So when you look at the fact that he has the safe bet right there in-house, right there. And if you bypass that and you're wrong again, he has to expect for his stars to be very just as vocal as they were being about AP. You bring in another guy and he starts to lose, those guys are going to be equally as vocal about what in the world is going on here, right? Especially when you have a Max Crosby giving you those cries for help before the season even ends. They told you how they felt. They showed you how they felt. You chose somebody else and you were wrong. I promise you, those guys in the locker room they're gonna let their feelings be known if it goes downhill. And if they choose someone else and it goes downhill, they're gonna let it be known.
I talked about this the other day in an article I wrote, my question and answer article, but I want to address it with you. People have asked me if I thought Josh Jacobs will be back. I think if Antonio Pierce is hired, it's a better chance than if they bring in a different coach that Josh is back. Your thoughts on that?
I think I agree with that as well. With Josh, just like last season, I think it's going to come down obviously to the money, right? But at the same time, I think there's a lot of connection between him and the Raiders, him and AP. So I definitely think that has a lot to do with, which way they decide to go, money, and then who is the coach. I think if they can figure out those two things, and it is AP, I would lean towards Josh being back. They bring in another coach, Josh might, he might be the first casualty. Honestly, it can go either way.
I think Josh would want more money from a new coach and would take less to play for AP.
Agreed. Agreed. 100%.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a few others. I don't think Hunter Renfrow will be back. I think he'll be wearing black and gold next year for the Saints. Your thoughts?
Yeah, him getting back with Derek Carr and Gruden's down there, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So yeah, I could definitely see him going down there and possibly reviving his career. I think Hunter has a lot left in the tank, but I think we all agree that he's probably done here in Las Vegas. So he will definitely be moving on, and I think his career is going to continue elsewhere.
All right, I want to talk to you about Adam Butler. I think this guy is a key free agent that the Raiders need to re-sign. I thought the defensive line was so good this year. You want to get younger if you can, but you look at this defensive line. Adam Butler was a stud. Your thoughts on Adam Butler?
Adam Butler, he's one of those guys that is sneaky good, right? He's one of those guys that he might not necessarily jump off. He's not a Max Crosby, but at the same time, he helps Max Crosby do what he does, right? Max benefits off of the other people on the interior line, and Adam is one of those people that helps the interior line. So I think he has to be back. He wants to be back. I think he deserves to be back, right? Whether it's just for veteran presence, whether it's just for actual production, there's a lot of reasons to bring him back next year. So I think that's what the Raiders will end up doing for sure.
I want to ask you about, in your mind, is there any other big free agent on the Raider team you think they've got to prioritize to re-sign?
I think that they have to re-sign. Not necessarily. I actually just checked, as you know, I just checked out the whole list. Outside, I don't think there's anybody that you're like, hey, you absolutely have to bring this guy back, or it's doom and gloom. Quick answer to you is I don't know, sir. I don't personally see that. Are there some guys on that list that you're like, hey, you could probably use that guy? Yes, 100%. But guys that you can't live without, I don't see that on that list. No, sir.
Right. Hey, Devontae wants to be here. Everybody knows that. He's a great guy. The teammates love him. He's a glue guy. He's a hard worker. All of it. We also know Aaron Rodgers is the de facto general manager of the New York Jets. If they offer something stupid for him, I do expect the Raiders to move him. Here is my question. We're not starting a controversy that he wants out because he doesn't. But do you think Davante Adams is wearing silver and black next year when 2024 kicks off?
Yes. Quick answer is yes. I think he is. But like you said, if the Jets come in or, offer you something that's just ridiculous, and when I say ridiculous, a first round draft pick being included in there, as a GM, you have to consider that, right? Especially as we just said, right? You're not that far off from being in the playoffs. Well, 2 first round draft picks next year, or, this year, and maybe however they decide, change it up. That's huge in terms of the future of the organization. So outside of that, though, I think Devontae is going to be here next year.
All right, I'm going to give you my opinion. If AP's the coach, 70-30, he's here next year. Because I think the Jets are going to make an offer. I just don't know if it's going to be big enough to get him.
Yeah.
AP's not the coach. I'm 50-50.
Yeah. Agreed.
Maybe 60-40, he's not here, huh?
I was about to say, at that point, a new coach comes in, you never know what can happen.
Yeah, especially if you can move him for a first rounder and another player. It's going to be fascinating. All right, last thing I have for you. If a new coach comes in, it doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter if it was Vrabel. Doesn't matter if it was Harbaugh. Doesn't matter if it was Gruden. Doesn't matter if it was Jesus Christ himself. There's going to be an element of a rebuild because you've got players that fit one system and nobody coaches the exact same system. If you keep AP, it's not the exact same system, but there's going to be tweaks to what they've done, and I think you're okay. Here's my question. I don't think I'm checking because I'm expecting a tweet any second that I may be able to talk to you about. Okay, it is. I'll talk to you about it in a minute. It is something that I think needs to be discussed. Raider Nation does not deserve a rebuild. That would be an absolute dereliction of duties to rebuild this team. You got to make some adjustments. You got to add some more pieces. They're not a Super Bowl team, but you don't got to go back and rebuild. Am I wrong?
No, like that's again, that's what I feel like I've said a couple times even on this podcast is that hey, those guys aren't that far away. The ball bounces a little bit differently this way. They're the last team in the playoffs, right? They if they have a a little bit more stability this year, a little bit better quarterback play, they're in the playoffs this year, right? So I don't think you need to go and tear the whole thing down. I think that would be a mistake as well, and I think that benefits AP. His cause in terms of becoming the coach is because if he stays there, you just got to tweak it. You just got to tweak it, right? Plug and play basically at a couple of different positions, and you're good to go. They're right there. And I think it would be a mistake to come in and say, hey, let's undo all the progress that was made during this season. As tough as this season was, progress was made. The Raiders made some progress. And I feel like to go and undo all of that would be a mistake. They're right there. Just go plug in the holes, some on the offensive line, do what you need to do at quarterback that you feel like you might need to do, and go play ball. And then again, that's when you take into consideration a full offseason with the coach of AP and learning everything that they've learned after already being with him. So they're right there knocking on the door. No need to change it too much.
Agree. Now, my text. Sunday's podcast, y'all don't want to miss it now. I've got a very well-known Division I college football coach coming on the pod. He and I are going to share some Nick Saban memories. Won't that be a fun podcast? We're going to talk Raiders.
Yeah.
Don't worry. He's got some connections to the Raiders, but it's going to be a fun podcast. How shocked were you to see Nick Saban go? I was not. Shannon and I kind of maybe had an idea it was coming, but I'm just curious. What did you think?
Obviously the GOAT in terms of college football coaching. I don't want to say necessarily I was shocked because, being in the media, whenever a coach speaks, I read what he says. And if you read what Saban has been saying in regards to the NIL, et cetera, recently, you can kind of read through the line, read through what he was trying to say. He was letting you know, hey, I'm not, it's time for me to go, basically, is how I read it, right? He was saying how this is basically semi-pro football, et cetera. Basically, these are professionals playing college football is basically what he was trying to get at. And that's just not what he had hung his hat on for 20 years. And I think I look at it like this: Coach K, Roy Williams in college basketball, once this NIL deal kind of came through, those guys, it was the same thing. It was just time to go. He's done all he could do. So I wasn't shocked. He's earned the right to go ahead and walk off, not at the top necessarily, but not too far off from it. So happy that it's that time for him. He's earned retirement and hopefully he enjoys it.
Known Nick and Terry a long time.
Yeah.
This was his best coaching job by far, what he did
Agreed.
this year.
Agreed.
So now I'm going to ask you a question. Do you expect him to ever coach a college team again?
Coach? No, sir.
I agree. Would you be shocked if he coached a pro team?
I would be absolutely shocked if he coached a pro team. I think flabbergasted would be the word if he goes and coaches an NFL team. Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't think it's imminent. I don't even think it's a 50-50 chance, but I would not be shocked. Lastly, I think the NCAA, I think all the Division I schools should get together and tell the NCAA, listen, we're done. We're either breaking away from you or you're breaking everybody away from Division I, and we want a czar who, like baseball used to be able, can make the best decisions for college football. We need a czar to run just Division I college football, and I think you give that job to Nick Saban. What do you think of that?
If there was one person that you wanted to give that to, I think Nick is definitely the guy. I can't think of another coaching entity or a college football entity that would deserve that position more than Nick Saban. I definitely think that would make a lot of sense. I think wherever he goes is going to be in some type of advisor role, of some sort. I definitely think that for sure.
All right, two more things. But when we're taping this, which is late Thursday night, no decision's been made. I believe the next coach at Alabama is going to be Mike Norvell. Who do you think?
So wow, so I think Mike, I definitely think he has the highest odds of what I read recently, if I'm not mistaken, or the best
I
odds,
have
I should
not
say.
seen that. I'm up here with the
Yeah,
black bears and the deer and the wolves.
I think he's a good option, but I want Lane Kiffin to take that job. I'm sorry. Listen. I think Lane has been.
You never want to be the guy who follows the legend. You want to be the guy who follows the guy who followed the
That follows the
legend.
legends. So yeah, I think Norvell's a great choice, but I think just in terms of I feel like Lane has been gunning for the job. There's been interviews where he literally has the same mannerisms as Saban, right? And obviously he used to coach at Alabama as well. So I think Lane will be able to recruit well there. I think he will be able to compete well in terms of the SEC, which Norvell, even if he might deserve a job. I'm just not sure he can compete in the SEC like a Lane Kiffin would be able to with the resources Lane would get at Alabama. I don't think Lane has ever had the resources he would get at Alabama. And if you give him that, I think the sky's the limit for Lane.
All right, everybody. He is Zeke Trezevant. He's our assistant beat writer at Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Remember, you can follow me on IG at Hondo SR. You can also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Hondo Carpenter. View all of our articles when you go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. Also, go to the top right-hand corner, hit newsletter, sign up. It's completely free, 100% free. We don't sell your information and we don't spam you. 3 days a week, you'll get an email with our biggest stories. Never miss another big story again. Check it out. You're going to really love it. It's going to mean a lot to you. And then also don't forget, if you want to just listen to our podcast on Spotify or Apple, because you don't want to look at my face, I don't blame you. I don't like to either. It's why I shower with the lights off. You can go to Spotify or Apple, and there also I do a second podcast every day. It's 5 to 10 minutes riding with Hondo and Dexter. Just a quick exclusive interview. We'll see you all there. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks, Zeke.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, guys.